Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. Actually, today I want to talk about one book in particular. I've tried to film a review of this book several times now, and I was just looking through the footage of my last attempt and absolutely rejected everything about it. I think it's been hard to put my thoughts into words, words that I'm willing to share with everybody. But I think I finally, hopefully, have come up with a better way of talking about this book. And I'm going to call this my most disappointing book of 2018. So far in 2018, I have read 79 books. And this was one of the books that I was a little bit hesitant to read, but all the reviews I see of this book are really good. My sister read it and loved it, but I did not. I did not love this book. I didn't hate it either, but let's get into it. The book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, and so first, a little bit of the plot summary. It's a book set in World War II. It follows two main characters, one a French girl and a German boy, and we begin following their lives before the Second World War, and then we follow them through the war. Right now, it's a World War II book, so we know nothing good is going to happen to these characters. So let me start by talking about the good things this book does, because I did give it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I don't think it's a horrible book by any means. It was just disappointing because I was expecting it to be better. So first, the good things. I think the build up to the climax of the story was really well done. Like those, especially the chapters that lead up to the climax. I was right there in the story at the edge of my seat. I didn't want to stop listening to it. Actually, I did all 3. I read the physical copy in some chapters. I read the beginning on on ebook, and then listened to it on audiobook as well. So the build-up of the story was just done really well in both the audio and in the physical copy. That experience leading up to the climax was really good. The climax itself was really, really well done. I thought that was pretty masterfully written, and there was a nice payoff with the climax to the story. So for most of the book, you're following these 2 main characters, and at some point their lives have to intersect, but for most of the book they don't, up until the climax. And it was beautifully handled. So props on that part. The other really good thing about this book is the writing. It's very lyrical, beautifully written, and this is something that I could tell in all 3 formats that I experienced this book in. So both in physical, audio, and ebook. It was just very lyrically written, very poetically. The writing, I thought, was really good. And the third thing that this book did really, really well for me was the character study. Right? Most of this book is really character analysis. We're following these characters and we're analyzing who they are, their lives, how they're growing, what it means to grow in the middle of a war, and the ways in which you're forced to grow. And I really, really fell in love with especially the French girl, Marie-Laure, and both of them were super sweet, really nice kids that, had no business being anywhere near a war zone, right? Like, these are the kind of people that get chewed up by war and then are spit out. And I fell in love with Marie-Laure, and I just kept rooting for her, and I kept hoping that things weren't going to end too miserably for her. The French boy, I cared about him as well, but not as much as I cared about Marie-Laure. So I feel like that's where the author captured me most, was in his writing of Marie-Laure. So now let's get to the bad stuff, the things that I did not like as much in this book, where I felt I was disappointed. And a lot of that disappointment stems from 2 things, I believe. One, the fact that when I started reading this book, I was not in the right mood for it. Like, I picked it up because it was kind of like next on my list, and it was a topic I was discussing in several of my courses, and I was like, oh, I'll just pick it up. but I was super stressed out. I was fighting anxiety. It was not the best time to be picking up a complex book, especially a slow-paced complex book. So that was my fault. But anyway, the other thing that I think impacted my disappointment of this book was I know too much of the history. And this is something that I've always been afraid of, but has rarely actually occurred. Most of the time, my knowledge of history can enhance my reading of historical fiction. Um, yeah, it just does. But in this case, it did not. Like, it really is somewhere where there were things I did not like in here, and it was how some of the history was handled. Not that anything was historic, I just didn't like the way a couple of things were handled in here. So let's get into some of these points, and I'll end with some of the historical discussion if you're interested. So first thing, which was impacted by my mood, I know, but the first like 200 pages of this book are boring as hell, like just really boring. This is where I had to go through all three formats just to get into the story, and I feel like that's too long. 200 pages is too long to wait to like get into a story, because at that point we're almost halfway through the book, and so it's just too long. And like I said, I do think my mood was impacting that, but I was trying really hard to get into it, all three formats, and ultimately it was really the audiobook that captured my attention in the end, and also things happening. Because, by the way, if you're a plot driven reader, this is not the book for you. Like, nothing happens for large chunks of this book. Like, you're mainly following characters and studying them and seeing how they're developed. So just FYI. On the other hand, if you really like that, then this might be one that you'll want to pick up. Another element that impacted my feelings towards this is that I felt it was trying a little too hard with the moral ambiguity, especially with the scenes set in Germany. Like, they're really trying to tell us, oh, there are really good people here. And I'm like, yeah, they are. There were really good people, and they did terrible things, and that doesn't mean that that was okay. But you're trying really hard to like make me think it was okay. The author would probably see no to that. He's just trying to present the shades of gray that existed there, and I have no problem with shades of gray, especially during World War II. Like, I'm a historian. I understand the shades of gray. I don't know. I think it was trying a little too hard, at least from my perspective. Then finally, the historical element that really bothered me, most of it didn't. I thought like the exodus from Paris, for example, was handled really well, and something that I prefer the way that the Nightingale, Kristen Hanna's The Nightingale, handled the exodus of people, the mass movement of people out of Paris. But you see that in here as well, and I thought that was perfectly fine, well done. So the climax of the story comes towards the end, but it's not the end, right? There's like a section of the book, a few chapters that occur after the climax of the story. And one of those chapters is told from the perspective of the German boy's sister. So it's from the perspective of a German girl. It's at the end of the war, as the Allies have arrived in Germany. And this is the only section in the book in which we get the perspective of the sister, right? And there's a chapter that deals with the rape of German women. This is very historically accurate. At the end of the war, German women experienced rape, especially the largest. So for all the armies, all the Allies have instances of rape in Germany at the end of World War II. But most of those rapes were committed by the Soviet army. Now, this is all told from one character's perspective and one chapter. And I felt like it wasn't enough. Like, I didn't need him to make the whole book about the rape of German women, but I felt like if he was going to include it in there, like, I would have liked it to be a little bit better handled, a little bit more nuance put into it, because it comes off as the Soviets are just such terrible men. They're raping German women. And like, no kidding, rape is terrible, and the men that committed those rapes did a horrible, terrible thing. There's what's lacking for me was the explanation of why. There is a reason here, and it's more than just these men are terrible. They are terrible, but the German women knew that the rapes were coming. They knew that they were coming because that's what the German army had done in the Soviet Union. When the German army enters the Soviet Union, there are mass rapes of Soviet women. So when things flip around and the Soviets are marching into Germany, the German women know. They know that it's coming, that it's going to be in part retaliation for the rape of Soviet women. And that doesn't excuse it at all, but it provides more context in a book that tried really hard to explore the shades of gray and the moral ambiguity of things. And then the rape is just thrown in there as like, here's one chapter. And I wish if that was going to be put in, that there would have been a little bit more in there. And not that it's handled cruelly in there, but I just wished a little bit more historical context would have put into it, especially because women's bodies are often used in times of war, and it is a topic that I feel is really important. It's a topic I like to discuss in my class, in both my gender class and in my violence courses. So on the other hand, I also don't want to fault this book for not being what I wanted it to be. I didn't want it to be about the rape of German women. That chapter felt really weird to me. So it impacted my enjoyment of it. The other thing is that section at the end. So other than the rape of the women, the ending of the book just didn't do it for me. It wasn't enough of a payoff. And I don't need my books to have happy endings. This is a World War II book. I know it's not going to have a perfectly happy ending. I expect it won't. But the last few pages felt entirely anticlimactic, especially just the end scene. I just felt like, that's it? Is that it? Okay, I guess. It just felt like such a letdown. And other people will disagree with me, and that's totally fine, but that's how I felt about this book. And so that's why I'm calling it my most disappointing book of 2018. It did win the Pulitzer Prize years ago, and I understand why. I understand why people love it, but I just wanted to share that I was disappointed in it, and hopefully I've given you enough that if you haven't read the book, you have enough to decide whether you want to pick it up or not, because I think it's not a book that I would try to convince anybody to not read it. I'm not trying to say this book is shit, don't read it. No, it's not. There are people that will enjoy this book, and you might be one of them. I was somebody who thought it was meh. All right, it's fine. It's 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it fine, but I'm not going to try to get everyone I know to read it. Right? So that is it for me. So I am still working on kind of my last videos of the year. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, what that'll be. But if you're interested in seeing them, subscribe. But thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.